This is the chapter where restoration becomes your reality, not just a promise hanging in the air like a cloud with no rain. This is not about revenge, this is about divine justice. What was stolen in secret is about to be returned in public. What was taken to silence, you will now speak loudly on your behalf. There comes a moment in every journey where the author flips the script and the pages soaked with pain are followed by paragraphs drenched in favor. This is that moment. You are standing in the middle of a divine transaction. Heaven has already signed it. Now the earth must release it. They thought they could rob you and walk away untouched, but what they didn't know is that your value was never in what they took. It was in what remained. God doesn't need to retrieve everything they stole to bless you. He just needs your yes. But in this chapter, he is choosing to do both. He is giving you back what was taken and multiplying it beyond what you even remembered losing. You see, when the enemy targets you, it's not because of where you are, but because of where you are going. Hell doesn't fight empty vessels. The enemy knew your future before you believed it. That's why he tried to break you through betrayal, scarcity, delay, and confusion. But the attempt failed. You're still standing, and now God is responding. This is not compensation, this is redemption. Compensation pays you back with interest. Redemption rewrites the terms. You are not stepping back into what once was. You are walking into what should have always been. It's bigger, it's better, and it's wrapped in glory. The same people who questioned your survival will witness your elevation. God is not just restoring you to a former position, he's elevating you to a divine one. They thought they were burying you, but they were planting you. And now you're about to rise like a tree that has roots deeper than their understanding. You don't need to beg for what's already yours. God is not trying to figure out how to restore you. It's already orchestrated. He has seen the tears you cried in silence. He has watched the doors slam in your face. He has kept a record of the words spoken behind your back and the opportunities that were stolen by deceit. He has measured the weight of your suffering, and he is about to deliver a glory that outweighs it. This is a moment of divine reversal. What once broke you will now bless you. What was used against you will be used to lift you. What was lost will become the foundation of something so glorious that even your enemies will be forced to acknowledge it. They may have taken your time, your trust, your resources, your peace, but they could never take your purpose. Purpose is eternal. And when purpose is preserved, restoration becomes inevitable. God does not allow subtraction without preparing multiplication. When they walked away, heaven stayed. When the resources dried up, the vision remained. When support vanished, grace increased. You are not empty, you are in transition. And now the transition is shifting into manifestation. This chapter is different, not because you changed the story, but because the author decided to reveal the plot twist. Everything you went through was not a delay, it was a setup. The rejection was redirection, the betrayal was protection, the silence was preparation, and now the stage is set. God is not just giving it back, he's giving it back in such a way that it heals you, honors you, and humbles you all at once. You will not just receive it, you will be trusted with it. You will carry what others mishandled. You will walk in rooms that once closed their doors. You will speak in places that once silenced you. And you will own what was used to control you. Don't be surprised when restoration comes wrapped in glory. Don't be alarmed when the very thing that was cursed becomes the crown. This is not the return of the old. This is the arrival of the ordained. This is not about getting back what you lost. It's about receiving what's been waiting for you. And when it arrives, you won't have to explain it, defend it, or compete for it. It will come clothed in evidence. Divine restoration doesn't apologize for your elevation. It proves why the wait was necessary. It proves why the betrayal couldn't stop you. It proves why the silence didn't kill you. It proves that God's timing is never late, only precise. This is the chapter where your hands will touch what your heart only hoped for, where your eyes will see what your spirit refused to stop believing for, where your name will be mentioned in rooms you didn't even know existed. You're not coming back, you're rising. And when God gives it back, no one can take it again, not because of you, but because of him. This is your divine return. This is your appointed moment. This is your chapter of restoration. They did it behind closed doors, thinking no one would ever know. They whispered your name in rooms you were never invited into. They twisted your story, tampered with your truth, and tampered with your blessings, thinking the silence of man meant the absence of God. But what they didn't realize is that God does not sleep through injustice, and he does not blink when his anointed are mishandled. What was taken from you was never invisible to heaven. Every tear you cried in confusion, every moment you questioned whether anyone saw what they did, every night you endured in silence, God recorded it all with divine accuracy. This is not the kind of God who needs evidence to act. His justice is not built on noise, but on truth. And when truth has been suppressed long enough, heaven intervenes not with noise, but with undeniable outcomes. This chapter of your life is not about striking back. It's not about proving your worth with the same weapons that wounded you. This is about the King stepping in and making a declaration that cannot be reversed. You are not called to fight your battles with bitterness. You are called to receive restoration with dignity. The tables have not just turned, they've been rebuilt under new authority. And what once looked like your ending has now become the platform for your reintroduction. This is divine justice in its purest form, when God chooses to restore you not in secret, but before the very eyes that doubted you, wounded you, and walked away from you. What makes this moment powerful is not just that you are being repaid, but that it's being done in a way that clears your name without you saying a word. It's happening in such a way that the people who once believed the lie are being forced to witness the truth unfold before them. You no longer need to explain yourself. You don't need to beg for understanding or fight for validation. God is handling your case with a precision no man could imitate. The same people who overlooked your value are now looking at the evidence of God's favor on your life, and they cannot deny it. This is not just restoration, it's revelation. It's the revealing of what was always there, but intentionally hidden. The truth of who you are is now coming forth, not through arguments, but through results. God is not just restoring your possessions, he's restoring your name, your honor, and your influence. He is returning what was stolen, but in greater measure because he doesn't bring back what was taken in the same form. It comes back transformed, purified by pain, and protected by purpose. The very things they used to hurt you will now serve as signs of God's protection over your destiny. You are not being paid back with apologies. You are being rewarded with elevation. There is no need for revenge when revelation walks into the room. When God reveals who you are, even your enemies must acknowledge it. The same mouths that tried to destroy your name will now become silent under the weight of God's visible favor. You see, divine justice doesn't shout, it shines. It doesn't retaliate, it restores with clarity and strength. And what's beautiful about this kind of restoration is that it leaves no bitterness behind. When God gives it back, he doesn't just return the thing, they return your peace, your wholeness, your rhythm, your dignity. You rise not just with possession, but with perspective. And that perspective allows you to walk past those who tried to break you without needing to prove anything. They will know, not because you said it, but because they'll see it. They'll see the oil on you that couldn't be stolen. They'll see the grace on you that couldn't be imitated. They'll see the promotion on your life that had nothing to do with connections and everything to do with divine orchestration. This is why you had to go through the silence. This is why God didn't speak when they acted, because he wasn't finished. He was waiting for the right moment, not just to vindicate you, but to elevate you in a way that would speak volumes. The restoration was never meant to be quiet. It was always intended to make a statement, not out of pride, but out of principle. Because when God restores, he also repositions. And when he repositions, no one can undo what he has placed. You are now in a season where God is not just setting the record straight. He is rewriting how the record will be remembered. They took what they thought was yours, but they didn't realize that what's truly yours can never be stolen, only delayed. And even the delay was used by God to deepen your roots, sharpen your discernment, and prepare your spirit to carry what's coming. You're not receiving it because you fought for it in the natural. You're receiving it because heaven ruled in your favor, and now the earth must obey. What they took is coming back, but not as a return to the past. It's arriving as a fulfillment of your purpose. They sowed loss, but God is reaping restoration. And when God restores, he does it in a way that reminds everyone watching that his justice isn't petty, it's perfect. There is something sacred about the pain you endured, not because it was good, but because God has chosen to make it useful. The very moments that were designed to crush you, to silence your voice, to leave you stuck in fear and doubt, those moments are now being recycled into divine material for your elevation. They thought it was over for you when you were misused, mistreated, and misunderstood. They assumed the blow would end your movement, but what they failed to see is that destiny cannot be destroyed by human hands. What was meant to reduce you is now the very thing God is using to raise you. He is lifting you from the ashes of broken promises, from the wreckage of betrayal, from the ruin of silent battles that no one saw. And the beauty of it all is that he's not asking permission from anyone who thought you were finished. Elevation is not built on comfort, it is carved from hardship. And what they meant for evil, God didn't just block, he absorbed it into his plan. That's the power of a sovereign God. He doesn't just work around the enemy's schemes, he transforms them. He turns the fire they lit to burn you into the very heat that forges your character. He takes the betrayal and converts it into wisdom. He takes the rejection and sculpts it into focus. Nothing was wasted, not one moment, not one wound, not one silent scream. All of it is being used now, not for sympathy, but for strategy. You are becoming a weapon sharpened by suffering, a vessel made stronger in the press, and a voice now louder because you've walked through the silence and survived it. People looked at your loss and thought it disqualified you. They saw your setbacks and assumed you would stay there. But what they didn't know is that God often hides greatness in the garments of grief. He often packages purpose in pain. The stone they rejected has now become the cornerstone. That's what is happening in your story. The thing they laughed at, dismissed, and counted out is now the foundation for a rise so undeniable that no one will be able to explain it except by the hand of God. They tried to bury you, but God was planting you. And now what they thought was your grave is becoming your garden. You are sprouting in the very soil they left you to die in. This is not just about proving them wrong, it's about proving God right. God never made a mistake in choosing you. He never had to reconsider your purpose based on their actions. You see, the enemy tried to interrupt the promise, but he never had access to the blueprint. He attacked what he could see, not knowing God had hidden the most powerful part of you beneath the surface. And now, what's rising is not just recovery, it's revelation. You are becoming the proof that pressure can't kill purpose. You are walking evidence that storms don't cancel destiny, they prepare it. You didn't just survive, you were strengthened. And now you're being elevated, not in spite of the pain, but because of it. You will soon realize that the place where you were wounded is the same place where you'll be crowned. What broke you emotionally is now building you spiritually. You're not stepping into this new level weak. You're stepping in with the strength of every night you didn't give up, every day you walked with courage despite the fear, every moment you kept believing when there was no visible sign. That is the soil of elevation. That is the substance God uses when he wants to raise someone with depth and authority. You are not being elevated for display. You are being elevated for impact. The crushing was necessary because superficial strength wouldn't carry what you're about to walk into. He had to dig deep so he could build high. You were not forgotten, you were being formed. The storm wasn't proof that God had left. It was evidence that he was preparing something weighty. And now as the clouds begin to break and the light starts piercing through the chapters of your life that were once dark and heavy, you'll begin to see that none of it was random. Every closed door, every loss, every delay, it was all alignment. God allowed the storm to test you, not to take you. And now that you've passed through it, your steps are different. Your spirit is stronger. Your discernment is sharper. And that is why the elevation coming to you is not fragile. It's built on truth. It's wrapped in experience. It's backed by divine appointment. The same hands that were used to harm you will now witness the hand of God lifting you. The same voices that mocked your process will now hear your name announced in rooms of influence and favor. But you won't have to return evil for evil, because your rise will speak for you. The glory that is coming will be louder than any gossip that tried to stop you. Your story will carry weight, not just because of where you're going, but because of what you've overcome to get there. They meant to end you, but God used it to unveil you. They thought you would disappear, but you're about to emerge, refined and ready. Your rise is coming, and it will not be subtle, it will be sacred. This isn't about going back to what was stolen. It's about receiving what was always destined, but delayed. What you lost may never return in its original form, and that's the beauty of redemption. It doesn't merely rewind the tape of your life to recover what slipped away. Instead, it rewrites the outcome with something better, higher, deeper, and more aligned with who you've become through the fire. Redemption is not restoration on human terms. It is restoration on divine levels. It carries the wisdom of every wound, the lesson behind every letdown, and the authority that only comes through surviving what was meant to destroy you. You are not being compensated with replicas. You are being entrusted with the original promise that was hidden until now. This is not about recovering what was taken in flesh. It's about receiving what was prepared in spirit. Compensation is mathematical, but redemption is miraculous. Compensation measures what was lost, but redemption multiplies what was preserved. You see, God never promised to bring you back everything in the exact shape it left. He promised to give you something far greater, something so profound that it won't resemble what was taken, because it will carry a glory that only comes through divine intention. When God redeems you, He doesn't just return what was lost, He rewrites the equation entirely. What used to define your deficit will now reveal your increase. This moment in your life is not a return to normal. It is the unveiling of what always lived in the divine plan. The delays, the losses, the betrayals, the seasons of silence, all work together, not to shrink your story, but to deepen it. When the enemy thought you were finished, God was just beginning to unearth a new version of you, one that could carry what was too heavy for your former self. Redemption is not just about giving you things, it's about giving you capacity. It's about stretching your faith until you can receive without fear, believe without doubt, and walk without apology. That's why this moment looks different. That's why the blessing is showing up in unexpected forms. It's not trying to fit into your old expectations. It's arriving in a way that honors who you've become in the process. You see, if it had come earlier, you wouldn't have been ready. If it had come in the form you wanted, you might have settled. But God, in His infinite wisdom, waited until your heart was refined, until your sight was clear, until your identity was not tied to performance or applause. He waited until the blessing wouldn't define you, but you would define how the blessing would be used. Redemption is not just restoration, it is revelation. It reveals the deeper reason why you had to lose what you did. It uncovers the truth that had everything gone according to your plan, you would have never encountered the version of yourself that could carry this level of favor with humility and grace. They thought what they took from you would leave you empty, but they didn't understand who was watching. God saw every loss, every cut, every hidden theft, and He wrote redemption into your timeline before the loss ever happened. You were never left to fend for yourself. You were being repositioned, not just for repayment, but for a radical replacement of everything shallow with something sacred. This time, the door that opens will not be temporary. This time, the opportunity will not be snatched by manipulation. This time, the blessing will not come with strings, because it wasn't given by man, it was released by God. You'll know it's redemption when it carries peace instead of pressure. You'll recognize it when it feels too good to be earned, but too right to be denied. What's coming doesn't match what was taken, and it was never supposed to. It's greater, not because you deserve it in human terms, but because you were molded in divine fire. It's coming not to return you to who you were, but to introduce who you've become. Redemption does not apologize for bypassing what broke you. It honors what survived in you. It looks at your battle-worn spirit and says, now you're ready. When God redeems, He also protects. What you're about to receive won't slip through your fingers. It won't be sabotaged by envy or blocked by insecurity. He's not just giving it, He's anchoring it. He's sealing it with favor, surrounding it with peace, and clothing it in timing that cannot be undone. And this time, you won't question whether you're qualified. You won't shrink to make others comfortable. You'll walk boldly because you'll know this isn't a borrowed moment. It's a birthright. What you're walking into has your name on it, not because you fought the hardest, but because you trusted the deepest. So don't look back for what was taken. Don't mourn the former thing when God is placing something eternal in your hands. This is the evidence of divine redemption. It doesn't show up quietly. It arrives with clarity, with confirmation, and with a weight that settles your soul. You don't need what was stolen. You need what's coming. And what's coming is carrying more than you thought you lost. It's carrying the fullness of what was always yours. Heaven never allows subtraction without preparing a multiplied return. What left your hands was never beyond the reach of God's plan. What felt like loss, what seemed like failure, what appeared as devastation was not the end. It was the start of something deeper, something unseen, something weightier. The kingdom doesn't operate on earthly math. In God's economy, when something is taken, something greater is being built in silence. You didn't lose it and walk away empty. You walked away with a seed in your spirit, a promise marked in the invisible realm, a shift that would one day manifest as overflow in every direction of your life. You may have cried over what slipped through your fingers. You may have grieved the seasons where things were taken unfairly, where people walked away without explanation, where opportunities closed before you even had the chance to prove your value. But God saw every subtraction, and in His hands, subtraction is never final. It's foundational. He allows certain things to be removed, not to reduce your life, but to refine it. There are losses that don't lessen you. They expand you. They strip you of what was temporary so that you can carry what's eternal. And while the world sees emptiness, heaven sees room for increase. When you thought the season was ending, it was only resetting. When something exited your life, God was already orchestrating what would enter next. He doesn't just bring things back. He multiplies them in a way that makes the wait worth it. But before the harvest comes, He does something sacred in the soil of your heart. He grows your trust. He deepens your roots. He matures your perspective. He breaks the mindset of lack so that when the multiplication arrives, you won't hold it with fear. You'll carry it with freedom. You'll recognize that what's being given to you wasn't earned by your effort alone, but prepared by your obedience, your endurance, your surrender. It takes faith to believe in multiplication when all you see is subtraction. It takes spiritual vision to trust that what's being removed is making space for something far greater. You see, God doesn't do random. He is intentional with every detail. And what you thought was a setback was actually a setup. He allowed what was shaky to fall apart so that what was solid could be established. He permitted what wasn't meant to last to exit so that what was always meant to stay could enter without obstruction. The subtraction was never meant to shame you. It was designed to shape you. You didn't miss the blessing. You're being prepared for the kind you never imagined. And what's coming will not resemble what was lost, because it will be heavier in glory, richer in peace, and deeper in fulfillment. God doesn't just restore, He upgrades. He brings it back better, stronger, more beautiful, more aligned. And when it returns, it won't return to your past version. It will come to the version of you that survived the storm, endured the silence, and still chose to believe. Sometimes the subtraction feels sudden, like the ground gave way beneath your feet. But what you didn't know then is that God had to pull certain things out of your life so your foundation wouldn't be compromised later. What looked like destruction was actually protection. What felt like decrease was divine intervention. He allowed the breaking so you would not build on something too small for your calling. And now that the unnecessary has been removed, now that the fragile things are gone, he is bringing in the kind of multiplication that doesn't collapse under pressure. Your increase is coming, but it won't look like what you thought. It's going to be wrapped in wisdom, dressed in timing, covered in favor. And you'll see that it wasn't a delay. It was a divine sequence. Heaven was never reacting, it was preparing. And even when people didn't see what was coming, God saw the full picture. He knew the weight you could carry. He knew the strength he had placed in you. That's why he trusted you with the loss, because he was also trusting you with the harvest. You are not the same person who experienced the subtraction. You're wiser, you're stronger, you're more rooted in truth. You don't idolize temporary success anymore. You honor eternal purpose. And that shift in your heart is what opened the door for multiplication. You are never being punished. You are being positioned to handle more, positioned to manage better, positioned to walk into fullness without fear of falling. God didn't take it away to hurt you. He allowed it to leave because he was about to fill your life with something that would never need to be chased, protected, or explained. What you're about to walk into is not a return to what was lost. It's the arrival of what was promised. And when it shows up, it will come with confirmation, with clarity, and with peace. You won't have to question if it's yours. You won't have to compete to keep it. It will carry the weight of divine multiplication, the kind that only heaven could produce through a surrendered heart and an unshakable trust. This is not just payback. This is overflow. This is increase, birthed through pruning, expansion after emptying, glory born out of surrender. Heaven subtracted for a moment so that you could receive what your hands were truly meant to carry. And now the multiplication begins. The weight of what they took from you may have felt unbearable at times. They walked away with pieces of your time, fragments of your trust, and parts of your peace, leaving you to question your worth in the silence they left behind. But what you didn't lose, what could never be taken, was the eternal essence of who you are. Your purpose was never placed in fragile hands. It was never tied to their opinion, approval, or presence. It lived deeper than the surface. It was buried in the spirit, anchored by heaven, and marked before you ever encountered betrayal or loss. What they had access to was only temporary, but what God placed in you is untouchable, unshakable, and unstealable. People can reach for your possessions, manipulate your moments, or distort your narrative, but they can never remove what God whispered into your soul before time began. That assignment on your life, that fire in your belly, that sacred thing that kept you going when the world tried to put you out. It didn't come from people, and it cannot be destroyed by people. The pain may have tried to cloud it. The trauma may have tried to silence it, but purpose is not delicate. It is resilient. It is the part of you that wakes up even when everything else shuts down. And even when they stripped you of the external, the internal kept speaking. You kept dreaming. You kept believing. You kept showing up, not because you had it all together, but because what God placed in you was still alive. They may have underestimated what remained. They saw what you lost and thought it would break you. They thought because the support disappeared, the vision would die with it. But God doesn't need the crowd to fulfill his call. He needs your surrender, your endurance, and your willingness to stand when everything around you says, sit down. The real value wasn't in what you had, it was in what you held inside. And though the world couldn't see it clearly, heaven had already confirmed it. That confirmation is why you didn't collapse under the pressure. That confirmation is why you didn't dissolve in the dark. That confirmation is why you're still standing, still breathing, still carrying dreams that didn't die in the drought. The truth is, people can only take what was never meant to define you. They can remove access, deny opportunity, or even damage your name, but they cannot touch the blueprint of heaven on your life. They cannot touch what was written about you when God formed you in secret. That divine script, that eternal design is still intact. It didn't burn in the fire. It didn't vanish in the storm. In fact, the very loss they thought would shrink you has been used to expose the parts of your purpose you didn't even know existed. Loss doesn't mean you're empty. Sometimes it's proof that you've outgrown old spaces and people who can no longer carry the weight of your calling. What they took served as a great unveiling. It revealed how much of your identity had been built on temporary things. It exposed where your confidence was leaning, on applause, on stability, on visibility. But once those things were stripped, you discovered a well within you that never ran dry. You found out that peace isn't tied to possessions, that purpose isn't based on platform, that your strength doesn't come from being seen, it comes from being chosen. And the more you leaned into that unseen place, the more heaven began to prepare you for something more permanent, something rooted, something real. You are not less valuable because of what left. You are not less anointed because of what was removed. What remains in you is sacred. It is enough. And in God's hands, it will become more than enough. He is not asking for what you lost. He is not looking to restore what was shallow. He is building from what was preserved, the treasure that survived the wreckage. That treasure is your endurance, your integrity, your faith. That treasure is your unshaken identity in the face of loss. That treasure is the quiet strength that refused to bow to bitterness. And now from that treasure, God is about to release a new kind of restoration, one that doesn't return things the way they were, but restores you as the person you were always meant to be, one that doesn't need the same people, the same structures, or the same patterns to work. This time it will flow from the purity of your purpose, not the pressure of your past. It will not need validation from those who left. It will be sealed by the one who never did. You are walking into a chapter where everything that once tried to define you by what you lost will now have to witness how powerfully you rise with what you kept. Not the possessions, not the approval, but the purpose. The thing that cannot be taken. The thing that carries eternity in its breath. The thing that's always been enough. There are moments in life when it feels like everything good is being withheld from you. Opportunities vanish, doors close without explanation, people change, and progress feels paralyzed. You begin to question your worth, your timing, your place in the world. But what you often don't see in those dry seasons is that heaven was not denying you. It was preserving something far greater than what people could give. Sometimes God allows doors to remain shut because what's behind them is too small for what He placed within you. What was blocked was never meant to break you. It was meant to protect the fullness of what He's preparing. The very things withheld by people are now about to be released by heaven, not in pieces, not through struggle, but in a way that carries undeniable evidence that God's hand is on your life. They may have shut you out of circles. They may have overlooked your value, dismissed your growth, or refused to support your vision. But their rejection was never the final word. The voices that said no to you were not louder than the voice of the one who said yes before the foundation of the earth. Earth may have resisted you, but heaven never forgot you. And what God ordains, He sustains, even in silence. He covered you in the waiting. He refined your heart while others thought they had the upper hand. What you didn't receive from people is now being poured out from a place they can't control. Because this time, it's not coming through politics, popularity, or performance. It's coming through divine positioning. What's about to open for you won't be because of who vouched for you. It will be because of who kept you. And when heaven releases what's yours, it does so in a way that no man can interrupt. No opinion can delay it. No competitor can block it. This is the season where what was once withheld will become visible, and not by human strategy, but by divine orchestration. It won't make sense to the ones who tried to stop you. It won't align with the timelines they tried to trap you in. And it won't require you to explain, defend, or validate your right to receive. The blessing will speak for itself. The shift will carry its own authority. The doors will open with such grace that even your silence will become a message. God is not just releasing favor, He is releasing evidence. Evidence that you were not forgotten. Evidence that your obedience was not wasted. Evidence that your private faith is about to produce public fruit. There are moments coming where those who once dismissed your name will now have to recognize your presence. Not because you pushed your way into their rooms, but because God pulled you into a space they could never close off to you again. What heaven releases cannot be revoked. What heaven sends doesn't need to beg for entry. It arrives with keys in hand, with authority in spirit, and with timing that answers every question you ever had during your waiting season. They thought that delaying you was denying you. But in truth, the delay only built greater clarity in your spirit. The delay made room for depth, for maturity, for a version of you that would not compromise when the blessing arrived. That's why it's happening now. Not because you are suddenly more worthy, but because the time appointed has finally met the version of you that is ready to carry the weight of what's coming. You were never being denied. You were being shaped. God never said no. He was saying not yet. And now the yes is being echoed from heaven to earth. It's the kind of yes that carries fruit, not frustration. That carries fulfillment, not fear. That carries peace, not pressure. You will begin to see how the rejection was really redirection, how the doors that refused to open were saving you from rooms that would have mishandled your calling. You'll begin to understand that their silence was part of your preparation, that being left out was God's way of hiding you until the time was right. And now that the time has come, no gatekeeper can keep what's already been sent from above. You won't need to demand your place. Your name has already been etched into spaces no one saw you entering. This isn't the kind of favor that comes and goes. It's the kind that's been preserved, protected, and appointed for such a time as this. You are walking into places you once prayed for, and you'll realize those places were not locked. They were waiting for you to grow into the grace, to release the need for validation, to stop chasing what was already chasing you, and now it's catching up. Now heaven is releasing everything that was held back until you were strong enough to hold it. It's not about proving anything to the people who tried to block it. It's about stewarding it well, walking in it humbly, and shining in it brightly, not for applause, but for assignment. You are no longer dependent on people to approve what God already affirmed. You are no longer waiting on hands to open when heaven has already spoken. And this time, what's released will remain, not because you forced it, but because you were faithful. You are not going back to what once was. You are not returning to the same place, the same mindset, or the same version of yourself that once tolerated less because you didn't yet understand your worth. This is not about retracing steps. It's about taking territory. What you're stepping into isn't familiar ground dressed up in new clothes. It's a divinely ordained space designed for the evolved version of you. You have been refined through pain, shaped through silence, matured in the shadows. What is unfolding now is not a restoration of your past. It's the manifestation of your purpose. The level you're entering is not a recovery zone. It's an assigned position prepared long before they ever tried to count you out. The divine doesn't recycle broken seasons just to give you a second chance. God elevates you to a position where everything you've endured is now working for you, not against you. You are not being placed back where you started. You are being launched into what was always meant for you but required a deeper capacity. This isn't a re-entry into the life you once had. It's an entrance into the life that was waiting for your character to catch up with your calling. You are now standing at the threshold of a divine fulfillment that has nothing to do with what was and everything to do with what is becoming. When you revisit old places with a new spirit, you realize you've outgrown what once held you. The spaces you once fit into now feel too small for the vision that has expanded within you. The conversations that used to excite you no longer feed you. The validation you once craved no longer matters. That is the mark of elevation. When your purpose begins to speak louder than your past, when your peace no longer depends on people, when your obedience outweighs your desire for approval, That's when God knows you're ready for the shift that can no longer be delayed. Elevation is not about height alone. It's about alignment. It's about finally stepping into the places that mirror who you've become after the process. And that process was long, painful, and often quiet. But in that quiet, God was building something powerful in you. He was stripping off the false layers, detaching you from counterfeit connections, and rewiring your dependence from people to Him. What is opening now is not random. It is the exact next level that your process prepared you for. You had to go through the dark to carry light. You had to experience rejection to recognize what real acceptance feels like. And now what's being unlocked is not just a platform, it's a purpose-driven space that your old self couldn't have managed. This elevation comes with clarity. You now know the difference between presence and performance. You know how to identify peace even when it's quiet. You've learned to discern hearts behind smiles and intentions behind applause. The season of elevation is marked by a maturity that doesn't need to announce itself. It simply moves in wisdom. You are no longer available for the same battles, no longer easily distracted by the same traps, and no longer chasing after what once drained you. You are walking differently because the weight of what you carry has changed. The oil on your life is heavier now, and it demands a new environment, one where your calling is not just welcomed, but required. People may think you're returning to familiar places, but what they don't see is that you're stepping in with divine authority. You're walking into this chapter not as the one who was broken, but as the one who was built in the breaking. You are not repeating history. You are writing a new one. You're not asking for what once belonged to you. You're inheriting what was always meant to be yours. There is no desperation in your spirit, only readiness. No fear in your voice, only fire. This is not just the next step. This is a divine leap into destiny. Those who once looked at you and saw limitation will now witness the manifestation of what was hidden in you all along. But you won't return to prove anything. You're not going back to show them what you've become. You're moving forward to fulfill what God placed in you before they ever doubted you. Your elevation will not be petty. It will be pure. It won't be loud. It will be lasting. And the very fact that you're not the same person who left those old places is the evidence that you're ready for what they couldn't give you. You are walking into a season where everything around you will begin to align with the version of you that's been emerging through every hardship, every delay, every silent cry. You are not arriving back at the same level. You are arriving fully equipped, spiritually matured, and deeply aware of the weight of your purpose. And now that you're in position, heaven is about to move, not because you forced it, but because you were faithful. Not because you demanded it, but because you were developed for it. This is not a return, it's a reveal. You are not going back, you are rising. There is a time when silence speaks louder than any apology you could ever receive, when your healing becomes the only response necessary to the harm they tried to cause. This is not about vengeance, nor is it about getting even. This is about rising to a place where you no longer need closure from the ones who tried to break you. Your restoration becomes your release. Your growth becomes your statement. You don't chase explanations anymore, because what God is building in you speaks so clearly that it drowns out the noise of what they did in secret. You've been in seasons where people thought they could strip you of value by subtracting their support, withholding kindness, or weaponizing silence. But they failed to realize that your worth was never in their hands. It was anchored in something deeper, something unshakable. God allowed you to walk through seasons of disappointment, not to break you, but to show you that your spirit is stronger than the sting. And now, as He restores everything they thought they buried, you won't even need to mention their names, because your fruit will speak. Your elevation will declare that you were never the one lost, only hidden for a greater unveiling. The more they tried to diminish you, the more heaven worked to define you. And now you're not walking around with resentment in your hands. You're walking with blessings too large to carry bitterness beside them. There's a power in healing that doesn't require a stage. It doesn't need an announcement. It just shows up in your peace, in your posture, in your purpose. You'll know you've healed when you no longer wish them harm, but you no longer expect them to be the source of your restoration either. The chapter God is writing for you now isn't about proving who was right. It's about showing that the one who remained faithful, the one who stayed soft despite the hardness, the one who kept pressing when no one was clapping, was the one God decided to honor. You're going to see how God reverses every attack, not by hurting those who hurt you, but by blessing you so undeniably that it silences every rumor, every assumption, every misjudgment. That's how God moves, quietly, powerfully, with precision. He restores what was stolen, but not in the same currency it was taken. If they took peace, he gives peace that surpasses understanding. If they took opportunity, he gives purpose that cannot be sabotaged. If they took joy, he fills you with joy unspeakable. That's the God you serve. He doesn't just make things right, he makes them better. You won't need to expose anyone. Your life will. Your transformation will make the loudest noise, not because you shouted your truth, but because you lived it. And while they may have thought they walked away winning, what they failed to see was that God was only beginning to build you in that moment. Sometimes people walk out thinking they've left you empty, but they walk away not realizing they freed your hands to carry something heavier. They thought they wounded you, but really they made space for your next dimension. This season is not about telling your side of the story. It's about walking into the story God is telling through your life. There's a beauty in no longer needing to explain why you were overlooked, betrayed, or dismissed. When God lifts you, it answers every question. When he breathes on your name, it moves in rooms your voice never even entered. You don't have to beg to be seen when God has already positioned you to be revealed. Your healing will be visible. Your success will be rooted in grace. And your peace will be protected, not because you earned it, but because you endured for it. There's a sacredness to being restored by God. It means no human can take the credit for what you've become. It means your journey, though painful, was never pointless. Every loss had purpose. Every delay had a reason. And every betrayal was only allowed because it played into the orchestration of something far greater. You are not just returning to life. You are returning to it wiser, deeper, stronger, softer, and more certain of who holds your future. This is not the season of bitterness. This is the season of brilliance. Not because you fought back, but because you let God fight for you. Not because you got revenge, but because you chose resurrection. The you that's emerging now is untouchable, not because of pride, but because of promise. Not because of arrogance, but because of alignment. And you'll know you've reached it when your peace is louder than your pain ever was. Everything they tried to dismantle is now being rebuilt in a way they can't interrupt. Everything they hoped would break you is now birthing beauty they never expected. But the most profound part of it all is that you'll bless others from the same hands that once carried grief. You'll speak life from the same mouth that once cried in silence. And you'll walk boldly through doors they tried to shut, not out of spite, but out of divine purpose. Because your healing is not just for you. It's for every eye that watches, every heart that doubted, and every soul that still believes restoration belongs to the faithful. There is a realm of restoration that doesn't bring back what was, but instead births what's better. When God moves, he doesn't simply return what was lost. He multiplies what they thought they ruined. You are not stepping into a season of replacement. You are stepping into a season of divine compensation. What was taken from you, what was stolen behind your back, what was mishandled while you were silent, is now being gathered in a way that carries more weight, more beauty, more glory than anything you could have imagined on your own. They thought they could take something from you and keep you stuck. But they didn't understand the economy of heaven, because when God restores, he adds interest, he adds influence, he adds impact, and most of all, he adds identity. Your name is being called in places you never applied for, not because of who you know, but because of who knows you, the one who saw the nights you didn't sleep, the battles you never spoke of, the sacrifices that went unnoticed. He has been orchestrating a return so personal, so intentional, that even your enemies will have to admit they underestimated you. This is not compensation as the world gives it. This is divine repayment, measured by the weight of your endurance endurance, the level of your obedience, and the silence you maintained when you could have spoken out of anger. You didn't retaliate, and now heaven is responding. You didn't fight for recognition, so now favor is chasing you. You didn't collapse under pressure, so now increase is about to find you. This is what happens when you don't just survive the loss, but you remain faithful in it. You are not being paid back in equal measure. You're being paid back in overflow. You're not just getting opportunities, you're receiving divine access. You're not just getting material things, you're stepping into influence, discernment, wisdom, and clarity that money can't buy and connections can't give. People thought they buried you beneath disappointment. They thought the weight of betrayal would choke your purpose. But what they didn't realize is that God never counts in subtraction. He only builds through preparation. What looked like loss was actually leverage. What looked like absence was actually alignment. You thought you were being left out, but God was pulling you apart to set you above. And now the very area where you experienced the deepest deficit is about to become the stage for your greatest deliverance. This season you are entering is not just a turnaround, it's a complete rewrite. You won't even want what you lost because what's coming makes it look small in comparison. You won't mourn what was taken because you'll be too busy managing the abundance that has arrived. God is giving you so much that you won't have room to hold grudges. He's filling your life to the brim, not just to comfort you, but to correct the narrative. What they tried to distort about you is being undone without a word from your mouth. Because the results will speak, the elevation will declare, the overflow will be your evidence. And this time, what comes to you cannot be stolen. It cannot be manipulated, mishandled, or taken in secret. What God gives you now is sealed by His promise, protected by His timing, and sustained by your growth. This isn't about returning to the table you were once rejected from. This is about building a new table altogether, where only those assigned to your journey can sit. You're not going back to reclaim what they mishandled. You're going forward into what was reserved while they were mishandling it. You are now in the position where peace is wealth, discernment is power, obedience is strategy, and favor is your evidence. You are no longer impressed by empty applause or public approval because what's resting on your life now cannot be validated by human hands. What you're receiving is divine, it's tailored, it's transformational, and it's permanent. There's no more striving, no more begging, no more proving, just receiving, just walking in what you were always meant to carry. They thought they took from you, but they didn't know that heaven had already written the compensation before the betrayal was even planned. Every tear has been counted, every delay has been recorded, and now the release is coming in waves. It's not going to make sense to those who watched you suffer, but it will make perfect sense to the God who saw you serve, weep, wait, and trust. You didn't miss anything. You were just being positioned for what they could never handle. You're not being restored to normal. You're being restored to divine. And when it's God who restores, He doesn't just give back what you had. He gives what they thought you'd never reach.